Hi, my name is Ian Lowe. I'm the CEO of Dacxi Australia New Zealand. I'm a Sydney-sider. I've lived pretty much all my life in Sydney, Australia. I have two beautiful young daughters approaching their teens, so the next few years promise to be very interesting for all of us. In my younger years, I was a competitive full-time athlete, and I still enjoy staying active today. And in the last 25 years, I've worked in digital media software businesses. Most recently, I've been the CEO of two ASX-listed software companies in the digital media space. Opportunity, in one word, and an opportunity to participate in the value creation. So to put some colour around that, I see huge disruption coming into a global industry by virtue of innovative new technology. And the underlying thesis behind this is not complicated. It's really about digitising assets in its simplest form. That is the industry we're in. And so having lived through the previous revolution driven by digital technology, which is really very much in the media industry, and having seen the value that created and the opportunity it created for businesses, particularly businesses that were born into that disruption, as opposed to legacy businesses responding to that disruption, I see a phenomenal opportunity over the medium to long term to create a spectacular business that can participate in the value creation around digitisation of assets using a new disruptive digital technology. So it feels very much like a familiar territory for me. So when I looked at the Daxi business, there are a couple of things that I was immediately attracted to. The first is that it's a business that has ambition to pioneer the wealth space around digital assets. So this is very different to really what we've seen in the initial phases of this industry, which is really dominated by traders. It's a much more transient world. As it matures, it's really those that focus on the long-term game, in this case the wealth industry, that I think will be the really big winners. So I'm attracted to that market positioning. The second is that this is a business that has built from the ground up all its own technology. So its own trading technology, its own exchange technology, its own blockchain technology, its own tokenization technologies. So it has a stack of components that it owns and therefore has control of its technology and product future. So I see that as a really compelling combination, a clear vision, clear understanding of why the business exists, a clear understanding of the market that it wants to dominate, and also in control of its own future as it relates to having built a technology stack, even though it's still early in the game. To have control of that technology, I think, is a great strength. I think the other strength that Daxi brings is the operating model. So this is a hub and spoke model where the technology is licensed out to independent operators in each market of operation. So the Australia and New Zealand businesses are completely independently owned and operated, and they license the core technology off Daxi. So what this allows us to do is not just to build a really compelling business with total autonomy for Australia and New Zealand, but it means that we can tap into a global network as we build our community of investors to start to explore new business models and new revenue opportunities that are global in scale. So local focus, local execution, but tapping into the benefits of both the operating structure and a global organisation with global scale. We think that's important. Well, from an Australia-New Zealand perspective, we want to dominate the wealth space. So that means helping people understand our value proposition as it relates to wealth and wealth building specifically. But much more than that, it means becoming a really key part of the broader wealth ecosystem in those markets. And so there's a lot of established players. They're all working in non-digital assets. We bring that digital component to the table, which as it's growing and maturing rapidly, we think presents a great opportunity for us to be seen as the clear, unambiguous market leaders in wealth and wealth building as it relates to the digitisation of assets, investment assets. So that is a space that we are solely focused on and determined to become the dominating player in Australia and New Zealand. If we think about the life cycle of any new emerging technology, I think it's important to put it into the broader context of the adoption of digital technology in all its manifestations. So, if we think about the digital revolutions, started with communications, moved on to digital transactions, we had the explosion in digital media. So this idea that we can take assets of diverse range of assets and start to represent those digitally, the underlying asset is exactly the same, but represent it digitally is not remotely controversial. This is just simply the continuum of the emergence of digital technology. And so in all of those other examples that I gave, I think there were various or different types of frictions and hurdles as it related to adoption. And I think we're seeing something similar here. So the way to think about this, I think, is that crypto is really only one very early stage manifestation of the underlying blockchain technology, which is capable of digitizing any asset class anywhere in the world in a way that benefits many, many parties. And so we're really, again, we're in the first inning of a much longer play, and crypto has become the buzzword. It will look completely different in 5 and 10 years' time. A lot of the noise will have shaken out. We'll be digitizing all sorts of different asset classes beyond just crypto and crypto coins and all of these types of things. So to think of it more broadly as just this continuum of the adoption of digital technology, in this particular case, the way that we represent the assets that we invest in and accumulate and portfolios of assets, we'll just start to represent those digitally. It's no more or less than that. Well, look, I think we are, as the Americans would say, we're really in the first inning. We're really only in that early adoption phase. So what it means is, typical with any new disruptive technology, as the adoption really starts to accelerate, it's dominated by speculators, early stage adopters, and that is changing right now. So to be very clear about it, it's not changing in the future, it's changing already. So we're starting to see really established players, multi-billion-dollar companies that come from the old world, jumping into the new world. And so that does two things. It accelerates the adoption of digitization of assets more generally, the take-up of what we might now know as crypto, but in the very near future, tokenization of different asset classes. It accelerates that adoption, but it also rapidly matures the industry. So what this means is, as bigger players come into the space, regulators will take a more active role, and that ecosystem that is already established in the wealth industry outside of crypto and digitized assets will start to mature and develop really, really quickly. So I think we're on the cusp of a really exciting period, and being the first mover in the wealth space focused on the digitization of assets specifically, we think is a fabulous opportunity.